If you're just growing and everything continues to grow in lockstep, that doesn't mean you're becoming more profitable. In fact, it could easily go in the other direction. I don't like to look at that as the driving force, because just because one competitor is doing X, Y, Z, whatever it might be, that doesn't mean it's the right thing for us to do. We're building sort of a self-contained universe in a secure environment because as lawyers and as a law firm, we have to be very cognizant of where our information, where our data, where our client case information is stored and shared.
You are listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to Sharp Strategy, Sweet Success. I'm your host, Tiffany Swidensky, and today I am talking with Thomas Pivnicny, and I really struggled to get the pronunciation right, but I think I did it that time. Thomas and I were just talking about how we kind of run in the same circles, but really haven't had a chance to meet each other. So really glad to have him here on the show to get to learn more about him and to talk with him about law firm marketing. So Thomas, I'll turn it over to you to finish out your introduction.
Sure, thanks, Tiffany. I've been in practice now since graduating in 2012 as an attorney. Went to Villanova Law School and was a great experience, and I've actually been here at Cate law offices ever since then. I've worn a number of hats and continue to wear a number of hats, everything from being the primary workhorse with respect to running cases and helping clients to now a lot of business development, legal marketing, management, building out different departments, things like that. Again, that's kind of why I was surprised we haven't really run into each other before, because we really do operate in similar spaces, but it's great to be here talking to you today.
Let me just ask you this. Are you part of any law firm mastermind groups? Do you participate in any of those?
Yeah, we've actually been in Pilma ever since right toward the end of 2019, right before COVID hit all of a sudden. So we've been in mastermind groups there ever since. Probably something we'll end up talking about today in some way, shape, or form, but that has been a great experience.
Oh, mastermind groups are really great. What's like the three big things you're doing at your law firm right now? What are the big projects that you're spending a lot of your time on?
I would say the number one, which is probably not a surprise to a lot of people, is working with artificial intelligence and figuring out how to leverage AI in its various forms for our law firm and for our clients. Number two is, again, I do have the legal marketing hat on all the time, and AI is definitely a part of that, but that's only one part of what it means to conduct legal marketing. And number three is, I would say, the kind of boots on the ground operational work, as there really is, I think, a big intersection between legal marketing and trying to market for growth, but also understanding the kind of operational needs and planning that needs to go into being able to handle that, assuming you're successful. So those are the three kind of big buckets.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about it earlier this week because I'm getting people are reaching out to me about fractional CMO services, and it's just as likely to be the COO as it is to be the attorney or one of the owners. I'm usually really happy to work with firms that have a COO because there's so much internally that needs to happen to supply marketing with what marketing needs to promote the practice. And I mean, really, it's just kind of an invaluable role at most businesses. And I was explaining to my daughter yesterday, they used to be office managers, but really they're a C suite seat because operations is so critically important, and particularly for law firms. So you mentioned AI. I'm always curious, and I'm talking about AI quite a lot myself. What's the AI project? What are you guys trying to do right now?
So I think initially we thought about AI, I think in the same way that a lot of primarily, say, personal injury firms do. Personal injury is one of our primary practice areas. So we thought about what's kind of the initial bottleneck that we needed to solve, and that was drafting demand letters. I'm sure we're not the only one in that boat. So we started out utilizing a product called Even Up. There are some other competitors out there such as Supio, Eve, and others. And so that was kind of the initial use case was let's kind of overcome this bottleneck here with getting demands out. And that's great. And we still utilize Even Up, and it's a great product in a lot of ways. All the competitors, I think, in the space are doing a great job. But that also kind of started us thinking, well, how can we use AI throughout the practice, not just for a single use case, but how can we sort of embed artificial intelligence at the center of the way that we operate? And we're actually in the process right now of building our own internal platform that will be the center kind of connective tissue with all of our business systems, with case management being one that we can utilize AI throughout. And so I think that's a pretty ambitious project, but it's probably going to be one of the biggest game-changing things that we can do over the next couple of years.
You're the first person I'm asking this question, so I feel like almost I'm picking on you. But what is the timeline? When are you giving? What's the deadline maybe in your head as far as our firm is going to be fully in AI and it's going to be a part of everything? Is that 5 years away, 10 years away, longer, shorter, something like that?
That's a really hard question to answer. Probably better to talk about it in terms of like V1, V1.5, V2.0, like whatever that may be. And I think we really kind of started embarking on this project at the kind of middle to tail end of first quarter of this year in terms of really being really pressing hard to kind of build out our own platform. And we're already there when it comes to V1. We've got a ton of business systems and a ton of kind of connective tissue all wired in to various modules that we can utilize AI to generate types of content, insights, provide, valuable kind of time-saving measures for our firm in a number of departments. But that's just the beginning. And really, I think this is something that's going to play out over a number of years. And I think we just have to be cognizant that we have to kind of keep our foot on the gas because the development process is something that's going to be ever evolving when you're able to build something that is customized for you, right? You'll always have a new idea of something that you want to build. You'll always have some new use case that you're like, oh man, I forgot that I spend 4 hours on this thing every quarter. What if I could compress that to 30 minutes? Those are the kind of things that you're always going to come up with ideas about. And so this is going to be a long-term evolving project.
You mentioned you were building your own platform. Can you be more specific on what that looks like? Are you using like open source AI and training it? Are you hooking into an existing model? What does that look like?
Sure. I would say the simplest way of explaining it is we're building sort of a self-contained universe in a secure environment because as lawyers and as a law firm, we have to be very cognizant of where our information, where our data, where our client case information is stored and shared. And so we're basically building a secure environment that has a user interface that when we are leveraging some type of LLM to provide inference, output, whatever it might be, that entire process is also happening in a self-contained secure environment so that our private information, client information is not being shared, being used for training, being stored in places and commingled with other individuals or entities, data. So it's all built within a server environment that's a self-contained environment with the inference happening within that same space. You could almost kind of think about it as its own MCP server for those who are kind of familiar with that terminology. But that's kind of the idea that we're working with.
I'm just now looking into this myself and building out basically a separate PC for my work PC that will become my agent. And with marketing and what I do, there's less of a need for privacy and security. With the law firms, there's a tremendous need. I just read just today like California's might be making it so, law firms can't use and share client data with these public AI tools. And Honestly, it raises a lot of questions for me because I already know case management softwares that are built on Claude or built on ChatGPT, and it's just like, well, that's problematic, right? That's going to really throw a wrench into all of these SaaS tools that are built directly on top of those AI tools. Am I wrong on that, or is that am I kind of in the ballpark in my thinking there?
Well, that's definitely a concern, right? And I think that one of the first steps toward being able to feel comfortable using and building with artificial intelligence is kind of understanding the various kind of gradients of where your data goes, right? Let's assume you're on some consumer free tier of whatever platform you're using, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, whatever it may be. Read the fine print, your information is being commingled and your chats are being stored and all of that. And so that's a no-no from a law firm point of view. But then once you get into various sort of enterprise tiers of using those tools, you are going to have optionalities in your contract negotiations for how your data is used, how it's stored, how it's siphoned off from being used in training. And then you can even go further than that, such as building in your own self-contained environment using what you could potentially call like a local copy of an LLM or something of that sort, where you're not sharing your information and the inference is not happening in shared space. So you've got all these kind of different gradients of how you can use and how you can build the various technologies and connective tissues. And so I think that's where a lot of the hesitation comes from. And as lawyers and law firms, we have to be cognizant of that. We have our ethical duties, of course. And just like email or just like cloud-based case management software, every time those types of technologies have kind of become more prevalent within the legal space, there's always this initial, oh my God, this is new, this is so dangerous. And there's reason to be cautious, but that doesn't mean with learning and understanding and building in a cautious and safe way that you can't then utilize those technologies. And that's where I think, where we will evolve to as an industry. But, the legal industry tends to take some time to get there.
Marketing wise, I feel like I always ask this question because I'm bound to. What channels are you guys working to bring in the most cases? I had to pick my words carefully.
You probably would agree with me here, but I think the direct answer as to what channels are you using is probably not the right way to start the conversation, right? It's probably best to start the conversation with what's your strategy? What are your goals? What's your time horizon? What do you stand for? As much as we really haven't met before and talked before in learning a little bit about you, I think you'll probably agree with me there. And so I think the answer to your question is we try to maintain a balanced marketing strategy depending on what the goal is. We always want to have some degree of budget and some degree of active campaigns that are helping us drive overall long-term brand awareness and recognition. Some of the most kind of easy to talk about ones are like billboards or TV, which we really don't do traditional TV, but maybe streaming TV or radio. And again, maybe you don't do traditional radio, maybe you do streaming radio. So things like that, we always want to have something going. But then you've got maybe some more kind of demand generation type of campaigns going. So those could be some type of display ads or some type of retargeting, prospecting type of ads, whether it be on Google Ads or Microsoft Ads, or we actually do some programmatic advertising as well. So you always want to have some of that going. And then, of course, your bottom of the funnel, bread and butter, people who are looking for a lawyer right then. I need a lawyer. Who's the best lawyer near me? Then you're really talking about your Google ads primarily. Google Local Services is a big one over the past number of years now. So those are like, as far as paid advertising goes, I'd say those are the big kind of primary things that we look to do strategically with whatever ratios, depending on the time horizon and goal. But then, you've got SEO, you've got what's the interaction of SEO and AI search now, and you have to plan and work with that as well.
I was actually at an event just yesterday talking about AI visibility. It's definitely a fun and actually totally new topic among marketers, which is exciting. So, I mean, it sounds like you guys have like a lot going on as a firm, and I'm kind of curious, how close of attention do you pay to your competitors? How much are you looking at what they're doing and saying like, let's adjust what we're doing here?
It's important, but I don't like to look at that as the driving force, right? Because one competitor is doing X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. That doesn't mean it's the right thing for us to do for kind of all the reasons that I initially mentioned, right? What's your time horizon? What's your budget? How quickly do you need to build a pipeline of cases, or what's type of case that you're trying to really build up right now, or whatever it might be. You can't just look at a competitor in your space and say, I got to do what they're doing. It can be a guidepost, right? Am I competitive in the outdoor space? Well, I only have one thing out there on main highway X, but my competitor has like five. You can get a sense of whether you're being competitive in any particular channel by looking at what your competitors are doing. But I think what's most important for me as far as guiding principles actually comes from the world of SEO, and the acronym that probably many of your listeners are familiar with is EEAT: expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And regardless of what marketing channel you're using, there's likely going to be various ways that you can generate content, whether it's paid or unpaid, that help kind of check those boxes. And not just for the purpose of SEO, but even sort of old-fashioned traditional marketing principles. Who do I think is going to give me a good experience, and who do I think is going to do a good job, and who am I going to feel confident in helping me out with whatever the problem is? And so if you can apply those kind of traditional concepts to whatever it is that you're targeting in your marketing, I think that's going to give you the best results long term, rather than strictly comparing yourself to one or more of your competitors in your market.
What do you see attorneys, personal injury attorneys doing right now and think, oh, that's just a distraction?
Just a distraction. I mean, lawyers are, I think, notorious for getting distracted by the new shiny thing. And so, what's kind of ironic here is that AI is kind of a new shiny thing to a certain extent. And so, I think it's something that, as an industry, we could get distracted and just start using AI for the sake of using AI because we hear about it throughout the economy. We see, that our competitors are using it in one way, shape, or form. We go to places, conferences, or other industry related conferences, and just as kind of part of the narrative. And so while I think that artificial intelligence is a huge game changer for the economy generally, the world generally, and legal industry, of course, I think it's easy for it to become a distraction. So that I think is a major risk that probably warrants learning a lot more about how AI functions and how it connects to various systems before just using it, because then you can understand how to leverage it and build with it and help connect systems to it rather than just generate some type of document for me, which I think is where most of our minds go initially as lawyers. I want to generate written content, which is great, but that's a very limited scope of how we could utilize artificial intelligence.
Well, there's also kind of a question of economics. I mean, specifically when you look at SEO. And if all of a sudden everyone in the planet is empowered to write as many articles, SEO articles as they want, previously they had to pay somebody, an actual writer, to get the total value of each article on the internet, all of them just goes down. And so it's something that it is an interesting economics question beyond just like, will it take our jobs and will we all still be able to make money someday? But just the economics of how we spend our time and what's actually valuable, that's going to move the needle for us, because you did see this like universal raising of the floor when it came to marketing and AI. And all of a sudden, everyone got tremendously better at it than they were before. But, there's still going to be a delta between people who know and understand the tools and how to market and where its strengths and weaknesses are, and the people who are just blindly putting their faith into the AI tool and assuming it knows best. Honestly, what a time to be alive. What a time to be marketing. And I guess running a law firm, I just do the marketing stuff because it's all so much different than it was 4 years ago even. It's just so much different. What are the bigger differences for you other than just like we're using AI now? Has your time changed? Where you dedicate it? Where you spend your time thinking? What does it look like for you?
Sure, that's actually an interesting question because kind of at the top, one of the kind of three main things that I talked about that we're really working on is operationally and kind of planning for growth. And so we're kind of sitting here having a conversation about legal marketing, but in a way, sometimes that's putting the cart before the horse. And as much as we want to be foot on the gas, bringing in cases, which we're utilizing artificial intelligence for as one of our tools in that stack and all that, you have to be ready for it. And so the other way in which we're utilizing AI is in helping to build efficiencies so that as we grow and as we bring in additional work, additional cases, that we can actually handle it in a way that allows us to scale. And so I think there's an important distinction to be made where growing for the sake of growing as a law firm or as any business, that's kind of like the easiest word to use is, oh, I want to grow. But that doesn't really always take into account your cost structure. If you're just growing and everything continues to grow in lockstep, that doesn't mean you're becoming more profitable. In fact, it could easily go in the other direction. So instead, I think what we're really doing now, as part of this kind of building of the platform, creating efficiencies, connecting various business systems together in order to accomplish things in a condensed period of time, this is meant to be able to handle the additional cases, the additional work that we hope to bring in while also using AI to help the effectiveness of our marketing strategies. So I think that's chicken or the egg. What came first, cart before the horse? It's kind of interesting to think about it that way because they both go hand in hand, preparing your marketing and preparing your operations.
It's a bit of me repeating myself because we said this earlier in the show, but operations are so important. And for me, I'm a fractional CMO and out here kind of winging it. I'm just doing my best to do good marketing for the law firms and figure out how to deliver that to them in the best possible way. And so I'm very much like learning as I go. I've unfortunately come to learn that there are some law firms who are they want to work with me. They want to grow. They want more cases. Every attorney I talk to says the same thing. Like, okay, well, what are your goals? I want to be bigger. But, well, let me ask you a few questions. Who's answering your phones? How do you follow up with leads? And it's, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. We just need more leads in the pipeline. I do my best, but I really can't help that law firm because they're not seeing the operational issues that are making it literally impossible for them to grow or scale. And there are just so many important questions that, as a business owner, whether you're running a law firm or running a marketing agency, you have to ask and answer because growth without trajectory or growth without an aim, I guess, is you don't know where you're going to end up. You have to have the end goal in mind.
Absolutely.
Well, and since we're kind of just getting to know each other and have lived in similar spheres for a long time, who are you listening to in this space? What podcast are you listening to? Influencers you follow? Where are you getting your legal marketing information from?
I mean, folks like yourself, of course. I also happen to recognize a lot of the names of folks who you've talked with in the past. Folks like Mickey Love, who you've had on, Eric Sanchez, Tanner Jones. Those are names. Those are folks who I'm pretty familiar with. Going to conferences, whether it's PILMA or it's other organizations, being in mastermind groups. I mean, you learn a whole lot from kind of being in the industry and kind of meeting folks from around the nation who are dealing with your same issues. At the same time, I really do try to read and listen to a lot of content that's outside the legal space, generalized like growth mindset or leadership training or tips for scaling or all sorts of things like that, where if you're just in the legal marketing fishbowl, it's great, but like you kind of have to kind of get out of that every once in a while. And I think that's what's been very helpful for me is that more generalized business growth, leadership growth. Those are the things that I think you can then apply in a way that a lot of folks in the legal marketing space or legal management space aren't necessarily thinking about all the time.
Oh, and that is so important. And I love it when I talk to marketers outside the legal space. And I try not to get jealous because they get to do some fun stuff that it's really hard to do for a law firm, or it's just impossible and plausible against ethics or whatever. And when you're selling a product or when you're selling even a service and not law firm, it's the doors are wide open and they're doing stuff outside of the legal space that attorneys haven't heard of. And it's you really do need to keep a finger on the pulse. I like listening to several marketing podcasts because you can just get so much information about it's like, oh man, they're talking about that. They're thinking about that. Shoot. That's actually really cool. Well, we're coming up to the end of our show. And I have my last two questions I traditionally ask guests. So, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to go over today?
I think an interesting topic is, I mean, AI is huge, but I wouldn't want to belabor that too much.
I do.
I think the concept of it's really, really hard unless you've got a ton of resources to be marketing in the way that I think we all want to, which is being everywhere on all channels, all mediums, all the time. But that's kind of how we have to do things, or at least plan for things now. So there's a whole lot to go into that conversation, various platforms, various strategies, how do you allocate your budget and all that. So that would be an interesting topic of conversation, but obviously we don't really have the time for that right now.
Well, probably have you back on again and get more in depth. Where do you want people to look you up and learn more about you? What platforms are you most active on?
I'd say the easiest way to find me would be number one on our law firm website, catelegal.com. You can find my bio there. You can contact me there through email. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am on X. My handle there is Abogado Suave. For those of you who speak Spanish, that may mean something to you, but you can find me there as well.
I feel like I could speak Spanish enough to figure that out. Why'd you pick that actually? Why is that your username?
So I'll try to make it a short version of the story, but we have in our law firm historically a very large client base that are Spanish speaking or of Hispanic origin. So I've picked up a lot of Spanish over the years. Abogado is Spanish for lawyer, and then suave, like smooth. So there you go.
If I ever get kidnapped and I have to speak Spanish, the only Spanish words I'm going to know confidently are related to marketing. It's like avocado. And they're going to be like, why is she asking for a lawyer? It's like, that's all I know. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. And Thomas, everyone else, we'll see you next time. Bye.